Welcome. It's a true privilege and honor to be here again this year. I have a distinguished group of panelists who I'd like to welcome to the stage. I've been watching Jerry Springer for a week trying to figure out how to be a good moderator. So take notes, send me mail on tips and so forth. I'm finding this to be potentially my next career move. Philantropreneurism. It's an interesting term, but we're here to fundamentally answer a question, which is, what does Greek America have to teach? What does Greek America have to learn about Greece, the crisis that it's in? What can we convey? How can we inspire? How can we help motivate? What should we do? That's the question fundamentally for this panel today. There are some truths that we're living by. These truths are that austerity has very limited value in what's happening today in the crisis of Greece. The economy is still on its knees, a topic that's very close to my heart. The young people of Greece are disoriented, they're disillusioned, they're trying to figure out what to do. There are elections coming up. We'll see what happens. I'd like, again, to help focus this panel, I'd like your audience participation on what should we, could we, what will work in Greece today. With that, I want to introduce the panel. Would you start us off?
Yes.
And give everybody a few minutes to talk a little bit about why they're here and what they're passionate about.
Well, my name is Manoussakis. I'm a co-founder of Groupio.com, which is the first crowdfunding platform in Greece. For those who are not familiar what crowdfunding is a funding process of funding new project ideas. Creative individuals can visit our website, make a personalized web page, make a pitch clip explaining what their ideas is, and start receiving contributions direct to their accounts. Since our project launched in 2009, we come in constant contact with young individuals, and we know that there are a lot of brilliant ideas that are staying on the sideways due to the lack of funding. So one of the reasons that we came here is to get the message through and invite you to join our efforts and help this individual realize their projects.
Hello, my name is Loukas Pilitsis. I returned to Greece actually in 2009, late 2009, after 21 years, the majority of which years were here in the US. And the reason I went back is to help set up and then manage the venture capital and private equity group for the group of companies of Piraeus Bank, one of the major banks in Greece. What we achieved in the last 2.5 years is basically creating a very interesting small group of people which has international experience. Not all of them are Greeks. They have experience abroad, but also understand how things work in Greece so that we can execute deals. Major focus for us is the innovation component and the new entrepreneurship, and that has been already proven by our focus on early stage investment. We were the anchor sponsors in the first cluster effort from a group of people, very talented people, which is called Open Fund, where we have invested in 8 companies, all technology, angel stage, and also technology, energy on the renewable side, and specific segments, strategic segments of the economy are where we're focusing on. And we're trying hard to, and we'll talk about that, to change the way things are being done in the venture capital side of Greece.
Hi, I'm Endy Zemenides. I'm the executive director of a new diaspora advocacy group called the Hellenic American Leadership Council. I'm here, this is the second NIC conference that I've been to, and it's equally impressive as the first. What I'm here today to do is to figure out how we go beyond the ideas that we hear today. We're going to hear a lot of great ideas. And one of the challenges of our community around the world is we have great conferences and there's no day after. There's a lot of talent in this room, there's a lot of talent in this panel, there's a lot of talent in this community, but there's never a day after. And that's what I'm here to work with all of you today, with my fellow panelists. We've already had some great conversations to make sure there is a day after, a week after, and we are looking not only at ideas, but solutions. Thanks.
Hi, I'm John Pyrovolakis, and I do two things. One is I founded and run a public-private partnership with the United States federal government, whose purpose is to promote American competitiveness in the global economy by promoting American innovation. So innovation and the economic impact of innovation is my professional concern. Side by side with that is I recently closed my first venture capital fund, where we invest in very early stage, extremely high-tech companies. And this is also my second NIC conference. And I'm proud to say that I've known Greg from way back when we were dancing Pendozalia together at the Cretan conferences.
Do you have any photos?
He does, and you're not seeing them.
Good afternoon. My name is Basil Mossaidis. I'm the Executive Director of the Order of AHEPA. I'm sure that's a very familiar term for many of you. We're the largest and oldest organization celebrating our 90th anniversary this year. And I believe Greg asked me to come to give some insight as to our historic participation in what philanthropy was for the Greek Americans and what our plans are for the future, because now in this modern day we're at a crossroads. The young meets the old. So we'll see what we find, what we do here today to see what direction we're going to take.
Thank you. Let's start off with the first topic I want to cover, which is youth and creativity. Youth and creativity are inextricably linked. If you look at all the young innovators, the inventors, the starters of some of the most famous companies, they all did that in their 20s and their 30s. And when we think about youth in Greece, we think about how to mobilize them, how to inspire them, how to give them hope. I want to start off with Loukas. How do you think about how we can get that spark alive, not just in the sense of, yes, there is possibility, but how to actually get it done?
Sure. First of all, I think a very interesting point that I think Mr. Logothetis brought up is we need to think positive and make sure that the positive is also realistic and existing fact. And it is true, human capital in Greece, which is not only the human capital that we're seeing coming out of the universities, but also in earlier stages, and we see this from existing very creative ways that we're seeing that from students from high schools. Are showing that it's live, kicking, and great ideas. The problem we're having is obviously the system, and that's what we're trying to shift a little bit, and that's the effort that we're having at this point. How do you create the communities that you get those ideas, and it's not only the funding side. The funding side and the VC side needs a lot of work, which we're working through. It's also the participants. The education is an important part. Education from our side to these young guys to explain, and ladies, making sure that this creativity doesn't get lost in the effort of creating those companies. It was a very rewarding feeling for me to go back and see the first open fund, seeing through the companies the ideas that they were developed into the first companies of these 8 companies that we invested in, and it's superb. It's excellent, but we need the second stage, which we will talk more today.
Manoli, maybe you have something to say about this, as you're one of those types of individuals.
I agree with Loukas. There is a trend in Greece now among young individuals to create new startups. They have ideas. There are a lot of reasons behind this movement, let's say. One is because of the wages are very low. They're not willing to work for 600 euros. So this has created the need to start thinking differently. Of course, they need support. They need support. They have ideas. And I'm just not mentioning just funding. Okay, they need some mentoring. They need to get the whole idea structured. And I don't know. Well, I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic regarding this.
I'm curious, what was the key to you actually starting your company? What was the single catalyst that actually got you from idea to real?
Right. First of all, we were watching back in 2009 all the success that social networks had on the internet. And we see how acceptable was from Greeks to get a member in Facebook and start connect with each other. I strongly believe that Web 2.0 and social networks are on the DNA of Greeks. And we thought that this will be successful in launching the services. So that triggered to us the move in order to start the company.
I want to get to capital and fundraising. Obviously,
Right.
money is a big issue anytime you want to start a company. There are many mechanisms, and I want to get to John in a minute about some of the mechanisms that exist in this country, actually, to start companies. Was there a single source of funding that you were able to actually obtain in Greece
No.
that made a difference, or not?
No. We applied to get funding from the government, but it came too late. We had the idea in 2009. We already made the papers, and it approved in 2011. So we couldn't wait 2 years to get the funds, so we started by our own fund.
Okay, great.
So there are ways to get funded, but it's too slow.
Yeah. John, you've worked with startups for a very long time. You're in the thick of things, if you will, around federally funded programs and then individual companies that are completely on the private side. How do you think about this issue around funding, around mentorship, and so forth?
As it pertains to Greece?
As it pertains to Greece. In other words, if you were to think of some of the things that work here that might work there, are there some themes, some memes that you can identify that you think would be valuable to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, probably the most actionable thing that works here and we could lever in Greece would be if you look at basically looking at the best practices. And the best practices globally in innovation it's very cut and dry. It's basically MIT and Stanford. Those are by far the best innovation ecosystems in the world, bar none. And I think there's a lot that goes on there that pertains to financing and other things that are widely discussed. I think one of the things that is not discussed very much and probably is the most actionable in the short term as it pertains to Greece is the idea of familiarizing young Greek talented technologists with the way they can leverage their skill set and their youth and their intelligence into wealth and an exciting career opportunity. And I think that means connecting them to the world-class innovation ecosystems that exist here. I think they can learn here. There are plenty of Greeks involved in the innovation ecosystem in this country. And I think picking up the best practices and taking them back to Greece is probably a very achievable, not hard to implement model, which could have very high impact. And by the way, is exactly what the Israelis have done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to get to the Israelis. I want to get back to the Israelis in a minute. You know, as I think about this country and I think about the reputation, especially Greeks have in the United States, as well as other parts of the world, they're known as very entrepreneurial, very driven, very successful business people. There are a lot of those in the US. AHEPA has a lot of them as members, and AHEPA is a very old institution that's seen multiple waves of change come through the Greek community. As you think about AHEPA and the established group that you have, what do you think AHEPA can potentially contribute in that scenario?
Well, the AHEPA's offered so many options over the years. Every decade we're faced with a different set of challenges. Whether it was 1922, and I'm not going to give you a history lesson, but just so you can understand how things change. When the Ottomans threw the Greeks out of Greece, AHEPA was there to sort of help move some of these people along, bring them to the United States. During the Second World War, we raised $400 million, which is like $4 billion today, in war bond sales. And the list is so long, it's not worth discussing it now. But in today's challenge of how we're going to get the AHEPA, which has 14 chapters in Greece, actually, to bring these younger people that want to get involved in these types of entrepreneurial things, certainly the AHEPA can stand up and have these mentor programs here. We have CEOs of many companies that are members, and it's something that the panel discussed a little earlier as to create the environment through the AHEPA and other Greek-American organizations that do similar things. Like the American Hellenic Institute used to have a business network that would do something like that on a local level within cities. But now we can talk about doing it nationally or globally, because what separates us from Greece today, as far as business is concerned, is the distance. I think the younger people in Greece understand that change has come. Whether they like it or not, they're faced with a set of challenges that perhaps Americans were faced with 100 years ago. It's not an industrial revolution, but it's certainly a technological one. And the younger people are far more adaptable to any type of scenario that would encourage entrepreneurism in this culture that they have.
It seems that it's all about the conditions that surround entrepreneurs. It seems that it's about the culture and so forth. And John, I want to take off what you just said. There are multiple countries that have done this really, really well. Singapore, which I've spent a lot of time in recently, is, we call it the Asian miracle. China is certainly taking off in very different ways, but Israel is another great example, where I think the combination of policies and practices are really influencing the startup environment and therefore the success and economic viability of the country. John, do you want to tackle that a little bit? And maybe, Endy, you can jump in from a policy perspective as well.
Sure, and you're pushing me into stuff that I'm going to talk about in my talk later. But I would actually distinguish between the Asian innovation model and the Israeli innovation model, and I think the Israeli innovation model is the one that matters for Greece. Asia basically does not, as far as I'm concerned, does not have an innovation model. And this isn't meant as negative, but these are incredibly uninnovative cultures. And what say the Chinese, Taiwanese have done is basically they've bought industries that they think are valuable, so they're picking winners, picking industries that they think have a long-term future and can drive global economic strength, and they're saying, we want to win that one, so here's $100 billion, or the Koreans say, here's $16 billion, because we want to be the dominant player in robotics, which is a different game than I think that what you were trying to draw out, which is creating a true innovation ecosystem. And I think true innovation ecosystems are very rare, even in this country. I think it's the Valley and Route 128, and then there's the up-and-comers under that. But I don't consider some of the Asian places particularly innovative. I'm not even sure, the Israeli case is complicated, but I would like that as the precedent more than the Asians. Greece does not have the wherewithal to do, for example, Korea says, we want robotics, so here's $40 billion. We don't care if you make money, and we don't care how long it takes, and there's a 25-year plan. Greece can't compete with that.
Yeah,
so that's a non-starter.
Yeah, it's a good distinction. Good.
Going back to my the direction that Greg gave me, that we're looking for some ideas, some takeaway from today. Greece, and as George said in his presentation, there are just some misconceptions and outright lies. Greeks are lazy. No, they're not. There's the famous OECD study that shows that Greeks work more hours than anybody. All Greeks are in the public sector. That's all they work on. That's also false. There's at least 5 European Union partners that have more public sector workers. Only Greece has a youth unemployment issue. Actually, Spain has a bigger one. Spain has a debt problem. Even Turkey, everybody's model, has a debt problem. But what Greece doesn't have, and we can help, is leaders. And this is something that we can do. If you want to talk about the Israeli model or the American Jewish model, they push for leaders. They cultivate leaders. And they realize that change comes from leaders. If there's one thing that we can do, one of the things that we're talking about, how can we help Greeks from Greece and not distinguish and make it an us versus them. I see, even in the audience, I see George Petrohelios from Johns Hopkins, and I know he's a student from Greece. He's doing a lot of work with a lot of students across the US. We have students at University of Chicago. One of the things that we're doing as a Hellenic American Leadership Council is we're going to create an Emerging Leaders Fellowship. And we are going to mentor and help these students and introduce them to best practices and introduce them to ideas, maybe introduce them to the finance industry, and if they go back to Greece, they can get funding. But we have to look around. There's a lot of students here. There's a lot of students here from Greece, and they could be the potential leaders. We can adopt these guys. If we take one thing away, let's take our group. Everybody here is successful. Everybody here knows best practices. Let's find one of these students. George will give us a list of all of them. All right, and let's say, you know, this is how we can help Greece. We will take a couple of these students, are there engineers? We will teach them what MIT and Stanford are teaching in terms of innovation.
Are you talking about a mentor program? Are you talking about some kind of other education program?
It's beyond a mentorship program. We're talking about a fellowship. We will mentor them. We will assign them to people who are in the industry that they're interested. But we will also establish ties. If there is a conference that we could, going back to your, you know, let's learn the best practices from the American Jewish Committee. I'm actually taking George this week to the American Jewish Committee's conference in Washington, D.C.
What if they recruit him?
You know what?
He has signed already.
You know what? God bless. If they recruit him and he learns something, and we have this growing partnership between Greece and Israel, and now we have a Greek student at Johns Hopkins, by the way, who can go back, and we're going to do this with other students. Yeah. We have to train and cultivate leaders and send them back.
Okay.
I have just to reflect on all this. The part that we see in Greece, and that's the benefit we can add value hopefully today, what is the framework today in Greece is we have a lot of people that they have returned to Greece in the last few years from the US, from other countries of the world, and you find extremely high talent. And the benefit you see is those best practices exist. There has to be a distinction, and I think that's where we need to see the benefit of this discussion. There is the private sector and there is the public sector. Unfortunately, the system has worked it in such a way where the private sector has become too dependent on the public sector. Let's take that part out. The private sector is extremely creative, extremely interesting, and bright ideas have been created. You found it yourself a few years back. Now there are a lot more opportunities. The European Union starts getting interested in these efforts. We are trying to utilize private investors' money, but also trying to get the benefit from organizations like the European Investment Fund, back to the part where we can use also this type of institutions, and create the ecosystem with the technology, knowledge, the technology education, not only the technology education, but also what you need to do. I think all these efforts that you're making are great, George, but we do have the weapons in our hands. It's how we change the culture in Greece. And from our perspective, we have started, meaning the venture capital groups in Greece are working very hard to bring the international standards. The industry has already got those standards. They just need the help of people like us to make them happen.
It's quite interesting. When we were speaking about this backstage, we were talking about the role of the government versus the private sector and who should lead. And I think clearly there is consensus among the panelists, and I'd love to hear from you at some point from the audience, but there's consensus that the private sector, the individual, the entrepreneur needs to lead because of the lessons that have been learned over the last few decades. I want to shift gears a little bit. We talk about the individual, I want to talk about the crowd. The crowd is an interesting phenomena, from getting startups funded to getting ideas sourced. The crowd is becoming increasingly important. And the crowd can be a crowd of 10, it could be a private crowd, it can be a public crowd, of thousands or hundreds of thousands. We have an expert in that topic, so I'm going to actually go to Manoli and ask him a little bit about how can the crowd actually help startups become real?
Basically, let's say crowdfunding. It's based on, as I said earlier, it's a funding process where a startup, for example, can make a pitch and start collecting small contributions from the crowd in order to reach the funding target and to realize their idea. Crowdfunding is based on solidarity and creative ideas together. It's a way of pre-selling a product, of testing a product in the market. It's a way of engaging an audience. We believe it's a very important factor to overcome this crisis in Greece. And Greek Americans are, one of the reasons that we came here is we're not asking just for contributions from Greek Americans. We want them to visit Groupio, make a crowdfunding campaign, and show to the Greeks how the whole idea works, how they can engage their audiences, what they offer.
So what you're looking for participation, you're not looking for charity.
Right,
You're looking
exactly.
for investment, if you will, for the ideas that are on the site.
Exactly.
Okay. There's a perception of individualism in Greece. And where it's, certain people are out for themselves. They're all watching their own individual pocketbooks rather than helping in unison to build a better society. Who wants to tackle that a little bit?
If I may take that, because we're working on that every day of our lives, an effort that we're having, and you'll see the efforts again being worked up as we speak. We are shifting this by two ways. First of all, the individual investors, going back to the private sector as we spoke about, and existing individual efforts from the Greek American community already to try to offer this time. I think to the investment comment before, we're not talking only about money. Obviously, money is a big factor to it, but it's also time. It's also effort to give your knowledge. There are so many talented and experienced executives in the audience and in the Greek American community that can bring their value. One of the things that we're trying to do now with the new technology fund that we've been setting up, specifically to the seed stage of investment, which is up to 750,000, 6 months to 2 years of investment is our target, is how do you cater to these people? They have a great model, they don't know what they need to do to build a company the right way. So it's that support, or I will use the term partnering better. The partnering of hand-holding, teaching them what you need to do, how you're structuring certain things, that creates automatically the ecosystem on its own. The ecosystem gets created, you have the education of the specific topic, let these people work on their business model. All these things create the ecosystem, and we're trying to use technology as the specific industry, but that is going to be a replicable model to all other areas. So crowdfunding plays a big role, break that individualism plays a bigger role, and leaving the state out of this makes an important role.
Yeah. Basil?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on what we discussed backstage before we came on, because I think this is exactly what we were saying about creating, like a mentorship program, to have these CEOs come from Greece to shadow CEOs here in the United States in an effort to sort of use that best practices model and teach them, much like my organization has done in the past with other fields, firemen, nurses, doctors, whatever. But now we're going to be emphasizing business and or information technology or whatever it is that is going to get the people enthused in Greece to get the job done.
Yeah. You know, I started off by saying there's a perception of individualism versus crowd, of not working together but working apart. You know, Andy, you work a lot around perceptions. You think a lot about how Greeks are perceived, both in the US and in Greece, what the ramifications of that are. How do you think about that? I wouldn't say perception problem, but how do you think about how Greece is managing its perception, you know, across both politicians and business?
Let's be honest, there's a perception, even in our community, that that's how we are. We're all each out for ourselves. And I don't think that's, I think it's a false perception. We see in times of crisis where this community came with nothing, built a community. In Greece, and again, not to, because there are some people, and you know, some people here may disagree with me, but I find it offensive that within our community, we have people saying, we're Greek American, not Greek. Our DNA is the same, okay? And I can tell you, and some people here remember it too, in 1974, 75% of the economy of Cyprus disappeared overnight. 200,000 people were turned into refugees. That would have been as if, you know, tens of millions of Americans were turned into refugees. Imagine a line starting and taking the whole north of the United States, all the manufacturing base disappeared. That's what happened in Cyprus. But you know what? The Greek Cypriot people, the Greek diaspora rallied. Cyprus became a first world economy, an EU country. And now, after we find all the natural energy, the natural gas, Cyprus is going to be the economic hotspot. Interestingly enough, as an aside, as we've spoken back, everybody's focusing on Greece's economic crisis, but tens of billions of dollars are being poured into the Aegean and Ionian now exploring for natural gas, and that's a potential game changer as well.
Which is the benefit where the state can come and change itself with these opportunities.
But we talked about solidarity, and that's, again, the role that we have to play. If you read something that's false, push back. How many people here, I'll do a little quiz of the audience, have written a letter to the editor when they've read something false about Greece?
That's a good percentage.
That's a good percentage. And I know some of these people are repeat. We can do it more.
Yeah.
We can do more of that. How many people here, when we're talking about crowdfunding, and we know that there have been philanthropic efforts, how many people have donated online to some effort?
Yeah, let's see a show of hands. That's a lot.
That's
I would say
great.
about 70% actually, which is significant.
And you know what? And that's something we can give. We can give this sense of solidarity. Maybe it's something small. I'll tell you, today, if you woke up, the newspaper's front page on the LA Times had been previously on the New York Times about, the title was Greece Limping into the Olympics. We heard two weeks ago, the track and field program had been shut down. We have medalists, we have people who have medaled before who have they're going into their last Olympics. They have a chance to medal, and they have no money to train. One of the things that we're working on is raising money. We're working with the Olympic Committee and directly with athletes to get training money to these specific athletes. We've had some very generous, large gifts. Mr. Nikos Mouyaris gave a 5-figure gift. We're about to announce another 5-figure gift, but what was amazing is how many $10 and $20 and $30 gifts. And you know what? That's solidarity. Everybody remembers what 2004 meant for Greece, morally and psychically. Not only the Olympics, but that summer winning the European Cup. This is something small that we could do. We helped Greece get one medal. It's one medal. It's a lift for the entire country. Show that we care. Write more letters to the editor. Push back online. Donate when you can. Solidarity means a lot right now.
Yeah, morale is a big issue. I want to start priming the audience to ask some questions. We're going to go to questions in a couple of minutes. When you think about morale and you think about what gets people excited, competition is one of those things. There are a lot of incentivized competitions out there. There are debates within this community of how we can incentivize entrepreneurship, how we can offer some kind of a prize, some kind of a monetary prize, some kind of a qualitative prize, introduction to some entrepreneur, facilitate something else. What do you think about competitions as a way to stimulate entrepreneurs and get them to try?
I think it's a great way of starting as an idea, a competition. We can make it, we can give clear directions of what we are asking for, and always turning to crowd. I will speak about the crowd again, crowdsourcing ideas. It's a unique procedure. It's the wisdom of the crowd, as we say. So we're very up to that. Yeah. I have made some thoughts about a contest or a competition that we can organize. I don't know, maybe we can explain it later. You want me?
Well, you can do that.
Yeah, I was thinking of organized competition which will try to combat the unemployment, the youth unemployment in Greece, especially from the ages 15 to 24, which is 51% due to the latest figures in March. And the idea was to seek some market-based innovations that will develop employment opportunities, and the best entries will be those that will demonstrate impact, prepare to scale up, and have some sought partners and expand their reach. We believe that just general like this will create, will stimulate innovation. And this is a problem that we must tackle now. So it's very specific.
Okay.
It's a great way.
Who has some questions? Let's take some questions from the audience. And there are people with microphones that we will get to you if you raise your hand. And we also have 2 mics up front for that as well. Who would like to go first? We want to get the audience involved. Please. Yeah. And if you can, be specific, and if you like, direct it to one of the speakers as well.
I wasn't going to direct it to one, but
okay.
I can. We've discussed some things about myths and things that have concerned us, like selfishness, which sometimes is hidden as individualism. Also, there's issues in Greece, for example, with the unions. My question is this: how do we deal with the dilemma of improving the honesty and integrity of in forward business thinking and business activities? One of the concerns has always been, and I got to tell you, it's not exclusive to Greece, because I think that is a big concern in the United States also. But there is some concern that things are not going to go positively forward until we get past the dilemma. I mean, the hard word is corruption, obviously, but the whole dilemma of taking business and raising the integrity and the honesty and the level that it's conducted at, so that we can go forward with some improvements or with some positive motion. Mm-hmm. That's my concern. That's my question.
Okay. Would anyone like to tackle that?
I'll take that, since it, again, you bring a very dear and everyday issue that we're dealing with. How you tackle that is the following. First of all, the new generation, we spoke about this whole issue being not only a financial issue. It's not a financial crisis, it's a social crisis. It's a good thing that's happening. It's terrible that it's happening, but on the other end, we have an amazing opportunity now for the new generation to start thinking differently, and they do, and we see that. The effort is, when you work together with these young companies, you find a completely different approach to business, and you're helping them set it the right way. How? Like groups like ours have very international standards. We do not deal with ways of the past, and we're trying to educate people why they need to accept these ways. Because obviously now you don't have a chance to do anything else but accept these ways. This crisis is going to create this issue. It's, unfortunately, it's inherent. It's not only in Greece. I'm glad that you said that. We faced everywhere. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more prevalent than other countries. In Greece, the only way you're doing it is working together, bringing the knowledge from here to educate that you can make money with the right ways, with the right product, with the right access to capital, with the right way of seeing your numbers, and you will be able to do that. It's a long process, but we need to start from somewhere, and that's what we're trying to do already. It's hard. It's not going to, this crisis is not going to be something that will change in the next 2-3 years, right? It's going to take decades, but we need to start today, and you need to start helping today, so that we can get to the point. And if I may also, within your point, the part of the competitions. The competitions are important, as we said before, not only on the level of the companies. There are the American Hellenic Chamber of Commerce, the Innovation Committee is doing something similar to what we're saying and what you're suggesting as well. And the Junior Achievements chapter of Greece is doing a competition in the high school students at this point. We're helping both organizations. What helps develop this benefit is we're dedicating our time. People like you guys, either the panelists or out there, you dedicate your time to explain to people how things work here. And that alone gives a different perspective.
Yeah.
And people start thinking differently.
Thank you.
I'd
Do
like
we have
to
another
comment
question?
before we get a question. If you
Yeah,
don't
please,
mind.
Basil.
I think, pursuant to what was discussed, that we had said this earlier, that Greece is pretty much hit rock bottom. So there's nowhere to go but up. I think, Endy, you said that earlier in the back. And I think that that's really the mentality of the people. When you visit there now, you'll see this overwhelming emotional, not depression, but it's sort of everybody's just lulled into this, like, we don't know what we're going to do next. So I think that this is the crisis that's going to bring these people out. Giving them hope from hopelessness is really what this is going to do for them. And I think these innovative new ways of thinking of doing business are going to take root, because that's the only way it can work. Mm-hmm. We can't go backwards.
Yeah. John?
Just a quick, I would definitely want to pick up on the gentleman's point about it's not just Greece, and in particular the point that it's even true here. In this country, outside of the Valley and Route 128 and maybe 3 or 4 other places, it's basically dead to innovation. Mm-hmm. This is not a specific a Greek problem. And I'm familiar with dozens of efforts throughout this country to spur local innovation in economies that have failed for a variety of reasons that are remarkably undocumented, given how many people try to do these things, and you see the same mistakes made over and over again. I want to make a point about prizes. One of the very first and most successful innovation prizes ever was started at MIT. With all due respect, Lita, you can straighten me out on Stanford's history. But at MIT, no one knows about this, and it's remarkable to me because now competitions have caught on like wildfire throughout the world, many universities and private companies. The guy who started the first innovation, the first entrepreneurship competition at MIT that has generated, I think it's $2 billion worth of market cap in a student-run, unfunded competition, was Dr. George Katsopoulos, the founder of Thermoelectron, who was previously a dean at MIT and has never taken any credit for the model that he established way back when. Mm-hmm. I think he would be a wonderful guy to come up here and talk about, who, by the way, after being dean at MIT, founder of Thermoelectron, publicly traded company, took time to meet with me as a graduate student at MIT when I started my first company and spent 2 hours with me and offered to help in any way he could.
There are many examples. One of the challenges is how do we activate people like that? How do the people from Greece, how do the people from this audience access them? And you were fortunate enough to get some time. We've had these conversations over and over, which is how do we get people together? How do we get the conversation among appropriate people that can learn something from each other going? I know there was another question. If I could take that question from the gentleman.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bill Devaris, and I work at Ogilvy & Mather, large global ad agency. And one of the things that I get to do a lot is work with Asia. And you guys talked about Singapore and Hong Kong and China and all of Asia, and also South America. And I think one thing we should learn from them is that it's not always about entrepreneurialism and innovation, but also service providing entities. And I think that the one thing that Asia has done very well is that they've allowed you as a US business to form and mold what you want as a outsourcing or right sourcing model. And I've always wondered why, we have 3 offices in Greece, but we've never offered those offices up as a right sourcing model, and whether or not this isn't the perfect opportunity or moment for some kind of corporate alliance or sponsorship where you could educate corporate America about how easy it is to come and mold a right sourcing model in Greece the way you want it, design it the way you want it. And I think that Asia has done that very, very well. They've opened the door, and they've allowed at least me in to create groups all over Asia that I think are as good or better than my creative groups here in New York.
Got it.
So, that's we keep talking about entrepreneurialism and new ideas and innovation, but what about outsourcing?
I love the idea of forming partnerships here in the States to help Greece, and that's going to be one of the things I talk about in my talk. I think the solution to Greece's problem exists in this room and can happen under Greg's foundation. Mm-hmm. But I'll talk about that in a moment. I want to pick up on the point you made about Asia. that's right. I think Asia is not a particularly innovative country. The Asians generally are not particularly innovative, but they have risen up to become on par with the United States and the European Union. A few facts, though, popular misconceptions. I don't know why they're out there. So the #1 manufacturer in the world is the United States of America. It is not China. We are the #1 manufacturer in the world. I deal with hundreds of early stage startup companies here, funded by the US government, typically out of government labs or universities. When they have manufacturing needs, they don't even try to find a US-based manufacturer because they assume a US-based manufacturer does not exist. And part of my professional work is to raise awareness that there are options in the States. I see startup companies giving equity in their companies to someone Chinese so that they can interface with China, when there's no need to do that at all, except in certain, like in displays or certain kinds of electronics. So it's a misconception about China and Asia in general. And I'll talk about this more, but there's basically government-driven, not just currency manipulation, but other kinds of manipulation that they engage in to get some of the economic advantages that they've been gaining over the States.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to touch on both parts because there is a dual part and we need to separate. Greece, I totally agree with the point. However, let's separate between value creation and BPO type of business.
What is BPO?
The business process outsourcing, which is the service-oriented work. First of all, from my past with State Street as an organization and other big organizations, Asia has worked up to a point, and in the last few years, you see a trend of nearshoring, which is in Europe, which makes your point even bigger and more important. The problem we have is in this, I think I will agree with John, and it's that part that we were saying before. You need the states to help you create the right legal environment, create a flexible working approach so that you can have this benefit. Greece has a great potential. We talked about the human capital, we talked about the infrastructure, we talked about the lower unit cost in the next few years with great benefit of the human capital. That's one thing to park. The other part is that's why there's no, we haven't prepared as much as you may think. However, the one thing that we are all focusing on and we're implementing is the Israeli model. The Israeli model does exactly that, and that's what we're doing. The fund that we're talking about is the PJ Tech Catalyst fund, which you can go to the pjtechcatalyst.com site and understand a little bit. We are implementing this model. The model is get those groups, create them as operating hubs in Greece, get them to create the R&D departments of very successful export-oriented companies. That's where you can help as well. We have prominent players, especially in the technology sector. There are a lot of Greeks. Every day I learn about a new name. Bring these people to create companies. Even if they're American companies, let them create a Greek company, get the right minds from Greece, put them as operating hubs in Greece, and then you create that model as well. That model can work faster and through the private sector before we do the BPO. The BPO needs to be of importance as well, but both these models give solutions to what we're talking about. Yep.
I heard from Mr. Logothetis earlier that he's making investments in Greece. I would be very curious to understand in the audience if there are any business people that are currently looking at expanding into Greece or utilizing some kind of Greek resource, either as R&D, distribution, import, whatever that might be, that have a business relationship there. Is there anyone that is engaged in that? Could I get you to contribute maybe some of your experiences as to how that works? If you're willing to talk about it? Oh boy. Is that Manos? Someone else. Manos. Can you grab a mic from somebody and start? And is there anyone else that we can get? Because I want to get some practical, I guess, reflection on what's truly happening in the market. Because we're thinking about how can we help and how can we, and there are many ways we can do that. We can invest, we can partner, we can import, we can do a variety of mixed approaches. I'd like to see if anyone is doing something that's working. Manos, would you like to kick us off?
By the way, I hope I'm not the only one.
that you had a great
Nobody
experience
else?
dealing with Greece.
Over there, okay. Thank you. Well, we've been doing this since actually the 9/11 disaster here in the United States, and it actually started selfishly. Initially, I had to go back to Greece and do my military service because I saw 9/11 basically,
we're running low on time, just to the point.
I'm sorry.
Please.
So we've been doing it for the company has been doing this for 12 years. We're actually looking at expanding it tremendously. One of the challenges we have today is that Greeks are becoming extremely desperate. The Greek youth that we are looking for, the people that are really hungry for success and producing something that they can be proud of, are actually becoming extremely desperate and impatient, and I don't blame them. And they're actually leaving Greece, and they're actually leaving their families, just like I did.
What's working in your experience of what you're trying to do? What's working?
Well, what's working is that basically, we give Hellenists the opportunity to express themselves globally in a much more global marketplace that has tremendous needs for people that think outside of the box, just like we talked about, just like what Greg said. Greeks are phenomenal at doing that, and that value, is really working.
So you have found Greeks in Greece that are actually augmenting some of your R&D, as far as I know from our historical conversations.
Well, real case study. One of my top clients actually said to me a few weeks ago, Manos, Custom Media Labs is doing phenomenal work that I don't see in New York agencies, okay? And you guys from Philly, outside Philly, are doing this work. And I said to her, honey, we do this from Greece. Most of our people are from Greece. They're not even from Philadelphia.
Did you tell her it's from Larissa?
And it's from Larissa, the leading producer of feta cheese.
Thank you.
That actually now is producing innovation.
Thank you, Mano. Sir, your quick experience, to the point, if you would.
Gibson, and I'm from Arkansas, and I'm a farmer.
Can you get closer to the mic, please?
My name's John, and I'm from Arkansas. And I'm a farmer, and I began looking for high-quality olive oil about 4 years ago. And what I found out is that Greece produces the finest extra virgin olive oil in the world, but about 80% of it is exported to the Italians, because the Italians have created this Mediterranean diet, but what you'll find out is actually the Cretan diet is better than that. But the Italians have done a better job of advertising and promoting it.
Yeah. And using Greek oil to do that.
Exactly. And what they do is Greece produces more extra virgin olive oil than anybody in the world. But the Italians import it, and then they say bottled in Italy. And they're using the Greek oil to promote their own industry. And in fact, they're robbing the proud farmers of Greece of their heritage. And only of the 80% of oil that is exported to Italy and other countries, only 5 to 10% of it shows Greece as the country of origin.
Yeah. Every time I go to Whole Foods, I always look to buy Greek olive oil, and there's usually one bottle. That's right. It's a problem. Right. I just want to point out something. I'd like to understand what's working for you in that scenario when you're importing olive oil. What has been your experience? And I want to even touch on the point of someone said corruption earlier, because there is a fear of doing business with Greece. And I want to understand if it's a perception or a real issue.
It's a perception. A lot of people tell me, be careful over there, watch what you do, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And what I found out is they were 100% wrong. And the people of Greece are some of the best in the world, and they're very proud. And it is a wonderful place. And many places that I'll visit, I'll go, and it's fun, and I can mark it down. But I always want to go back to Greece.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to point out something that Andy actually mentioned earlier, and I think this is important. People wanted to clap, and I noticed a couple of people going, is it okay? Is it okay to clap? And then, the Cretan thing came out, and John's thumbs just went up automatically, just like this. And I think one of the points I want to make, and I think this is a really important point, is it's good to be Greek. It's still good to be Greek. It's good to be proud of where we are and where we come from. We have a lot to be proud of. So, and we've taught the world a lot, and this isn't some ethnocentric view, but there's still a lot that Greece can teach the world. There's a lot that we can teach the world. I want to take one last question, and then, oh, Jesus, two of you now. And then I'm going to wrap it up. 5 more minutes. Last question, anyone? Please.
They picked, now you got to get to it.
Hi there, thank you. My name is Mossaidis, I'm from Athens, and I run a co-working space called CoLab Workspace. And essentially it's a yeah, is this on? Yeah. So I run a space called CoLab Workspace, which is a place where we invite young teams to come and innovate and do what they do in a safer environment. So I just wanted to say, I'm originally from South Africa, so I'm a Greek of the diaspora, just like you are. And I'm filled with emotions to be here because I understand what it is that drives you guys and why you're doing this. And just a few things about the Greeks. Greeks are, by nature, successful people. They survive. No matter what, they'll survive. Now, about corruption and integrity, where there were a couple of points, you know, some are corrupt and don't have much integrity, but why is that? It's because they can. And you know, when we start changing the landscape, start changing the substrate, and not allowing them to can, then you'll see what magic will happen. Now, in terms of substrate, what we need is we need alliances, and we need to be able to follow role models. And you guys are these role models. We need to find the successful Greeks of the diaspora, show them up as role models, and CoLab's business model is based around role models. So we bring in the very successful young startups. We give them space at very, very cut rate prices, so we can keep them in there, so they can influence other people to do things.
Young people need examples. I'm gonna be a little bit rude and cut you off. I want to get one more last question, and then I've got the police here that really want to get us off the stage.
Thank you.
And I think, Michali, you have a question.
I was recently fortunate enough to be part of an incubator called Startup Chile, and I bring that up because the point of that was just to, the government of Chile funded entrepreneurs to come, and they gave them grants, $40,000 grants, not much, to come and try to work on their business. And the one thing they asked was, come and see everything that Chile has to offer, and if you want to stay in Chile, stay. If you don't, go. And I bring that up because I'm wondering, I want to ask you, I'm sure you're all involved in different ways, and there was talk about other grants and gifts and awards. It seems like a lot of times the conversation is to invite people to Greece to build businesses and to do things, but they're very Greece-centered. How can we build a Greek business? And it seems like it's kind of counterintuitive to entrepreneurship and innovation to offer these grants and put them in a framework, in a box of businesses which could support specific Greek businesses, industries. And I think that the goal should be to bring the high-level entrepreneurs or innovators and have them see what is there and support them and let them build whatever businesses could stem it. And not just Greeks, but maybe people from all over the world. And I was working with people from all over the world there. So
thank you for saying that. If I can take that, because this is a, thank you. First of all, what we're focusing on is to bring Greeks into the world, not into Greece only. All the companies, a prerequisite for our fund, for funding and the likes of funds, is for export-oriented business. We are not going to look at any company that will not have this opportunity to exit Greece, become scalable model. Second of all, the open fund model, where we have invested in 8 companies, some of them are English, Czech, Ukrainian, Russian. So we opened it in the same way for this purpose, because some of them may want it to either stay in Greece. At this point, I hold a percentage, 5%, in companies that have nothing to do with Greece. They came, they had a great idea, but these companies, you're monitoring them. That's where you build the synergies, you build the ecosystem, and you get the benefit for the companies that they are missing something in Greece to create the model to send it abroad. Totally agree with both of you. Of your points, and they exist today as we speak. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a benefit to the Greek people.
I was a guy from Boston in Chile doing business, selling things to Vietnam and Singapore. So it had nothing to do with Chile, but eventually Absolutely. Chile did benefit. And
we just invested in a company, Greek company based out of Kilkis. 98% of its sales is outside Greece.
Yeah, we hope more people drink the Greek water and stay, just like Chile's hoping the same thing. So with that, I want to say thank you to our panelists. Hand of applause. Thank you to all of you. Keep the conversation going. I think it's just starting. We look forward to chatting with you the rest of the time. Please search these people out. They have a lot to offer. Thank you.